Thanks, Johan and In-Use, for giving me this opportunity to speak at this conference. I'm going to take you on a journey to the Far East. I'm going to cover 3 topics in this talk. Firstly, how to design UX for China. Are there any differences from designing UX for the West? And also, sorry, wrong button. And how to work with Chinese people, and again, how it differs from working with Westerners. And then last, what the West can learn from Chinese UX so far. And so, how to design UX for China? First thing first, that do your homework on ethnographic research. When designing UX for China, ethnographic research is probably more complicated and important than you're used to. Why? Because China is a massive country. I mean, with 1.4 billion population, the difference between the different user groups are larger than anyone could imagine, really. When people think of China, they often think of imagining a unity and consistency and regularity, more towards collective than the individual. However, the truth is, China has 34 provincial level divisions, and the local politics and cultural practice create a huge difference between each provinces. The easiest way to understand this is to think of China like a whole Europe, and each province is like a country in Europe. That's how different they are. And there are big differences between megacities like Beijing and Shanghai, and middle-sized cities like the capitals of each province, and also the rural countryside. On the other hand, China has also experienced more social and political movements in the 20th century compared to most Western countries. From the Great Leap Forward in the 50s to the Cultural Revolution in the 60s, and then the economic reform from the end of the 70s have created many new wealthy groups, and also the tremendous inequity between the distribution of wealth. So as a result, culture gaps between generations are often very large. For example, someone born in the 40s who has experienced all those political events, movement in the 20th century, had a very different view of life as compared to someone who was born after the Cultural Revolution. And then also, also very different from the very young, like the little emperors in the house, in the family. And then also, the social identity plays a very big role in the Chinese society. There is a very strong notion of in-group and out-group. It is very important to be seen as one of the group members for people to open up to you or to trust you. And this is not just towards foreigners, but also among the Chinese people as well. So my advice to anyone who would like to do a user research in China would be use local facilitator. And if possible, from the same group, that would be even better. And next, about cultural differences. Of course, there are many cultural differences. I won't be able to cover all of them in this short presentation, but just a few examples for you to get an idea of how it plays a role in the UX design. So one example is about designing a dating website. Marriage is considered to be very important in Chinese people, especially the older generation's men. Sometimes a young girl has to rent a boyfriend or girlfriend during the Chinese New Year or other family gathering occasions, just to make their parents happy and to stop other relatives from asking questions. So you probably don't know that unlike the West, that a lot of users on the dating website are actually parents looking for marriage partners for their children, because they want them to be married before 30. And even if they have already have someone, the parents don't always trust their judgment, and they always want to find someone they think is more suited to their son or daughter. So therefore, when you're designing product or website, it's very important to find out the hidden users of your products. And also, the elderly are highly involved, in their children's lives, not just before they get married, but also, throughout the whole life, basically. It is very common for young Chinese couple to leave their child being looked after by grandparents. Therefore, the grandparents' habit and the activities they do with their children, with their grandchildren, are the important considerations for children's product market. Another thing is the trust issue. Like I said before, people in general are suspicious of strangers. So in China, most of the dating websites ask users to input their real name and age, and they will verify it, from against their identity document. They also provide the space for personal blogs and online forums for users to express their views. So they know each other a lot before they eventually meet offline. And this trust issue also affected the design of online shopping. For example, Amazon China provide an option to pay for the goods when they're being delivered, rather than when they're being ordered. And this option is not available for their users in the West. Traditionally, Chinese people really like the use of bright and cheerful colors because they represent happiness and prosperity. People don't like black and white because they're used to at funerals. So I took this photo at China Telecom last year when I was organizing a UX tour of China. So this is actually a very colorful design of a board of outstanding employees. And this also affects domestic appliance. So colors and the floral patterns are quite commonly used at the design of the products. Of course, there are many things differ from design in the West. So, but let's move on to how to work with Chinese for now. The way Chinese people think is very different from the way Western people think. So last year, after the UX tour of China, there's a company in England and a company in China decided to work together and asked me to help. And I noticed a very interesting thing is the Chinese company thought that they should form a formal working relationship structure first. So things like how they're going to work together, how they're going to promote each other on their website, and if they are going to just appoint an admin to specifically for this partnership before they move on to the real product. That's how they think this should be done before actual project. But then the English company was very keen to work on the specific project first. And their idea is to, once we have worked on the project, we know how we can work together in the future so that we can set up principles after this special particular project. So it's a bit like this circle and dot, where the Chinese people think about circle first before they're moving on to the dot. And the English company, the Western company, that usually concentrate on the dot first and then before they move out to the circle. And so again, there are many things you need to consider when working with Chinese people. I'm just going to pick up a few things that I think are most important. The thing is, firstly, it is very important to spend time and effort to build personal relationship before any practical project. So you might want to go out with your clients or partners or customers for a meal or even a massage. It is very common for business meetings to take place on a dining table in a restaurant. So a friend of mine once was offered a project with a Chinese organization. So his contact asked him to go out for a meal, for dinner, quite a few times. And he went out once, and after that, he just didn't think it was necessary. And then he just concentrated and focused on the work. But because he hadn't built up the very strong relationship with this client, in the end, he actually lost the project, which is a shame. And also, it would be really helpful to offer your clients or partners or customers small presents. No matter how small it is, Chinese people really appreciate it. In our last UX tour of China, almost all the companies we visited, from the big government-owned companies to the small design studios. They all give us small presents as souvenirs, which is really nice for us. And the same applies to building personal relationships for user research. It really takes time for Chinese people to open up, and to trust you. So you might find yourself having to spend a longer time at depth interviews just to, for your customer to really open up to you. Another important aspect of working with Chinese people is to respect seniors. And by this, I mean seniority in terms of both age and position. Chinese culture is hugely influenced by Confucius, a Chinese philosopher, died about 2,500 years ago. And his teachings emphasized on the importance of social order and hierarchy. So as I explained before, the elderly are heavily involved in their children's lives. So there is also not much concept of privacy in China. When doing user research in China, you really should expect an interruption from other family members, especially the seniors in the household. They're going to be there. Look at this picture, that the mom at the right-hand side is actually participating and listening to what you're doing as well. But sometimes it can be a good thing because you can actually use this factor. You can get someone to distract the elderly in the family, especially if you're a foreigner and you can speak a little bit Chinese. And the elderly usually are very, very curious and very keen to teach you more language. So you can actually have a conversation, someone separately with the elderly, and you have your interview, next to them. Also, hierarchy means respecting and listening to people who are older than you and your superiors. And there is even more hierarchy in the workplace. When the bosses say something, it's a command. It's not a starting point to discuss, really. So in our tour, we also learned that sometimes the boss even got really involved in the product design, and maybe even the whole product is designed by the boss. I mean, it can be a good thing if this boss has a very good understanding of the customer and also appreciates the importance of UX designer. So, it could be a Steve Jobs, like highly involved in the design. But then the truth is, a lot of them don't really have this ability. And then you can't really discuss with them. So if they want to put a lot of flash adverts on the homepage just to say, we want more revenues from the advertisers, and the designers basically have no choice but to follow. A lot of big companies, are government-owned, national companies in China, either government-owned or backed up by them. So it's really important to keep a good relationship. Don't mess up with the leaders. If you keep a good relationship with the officials, it will really help you to achieve your goals. Last thing, learn some Mandarin. Sounds really difficult, but actually, I don't mean you have to be fluent in the language, although it really helps. But just some greeting words are good enough to break the initial barrier and build a rapport. As I said, the Chinese people really they are keen to teach you the language, and showing that you are genuinely interested in the language and the culture will greatly help you to work with the Chinese people, because Chinese people are extremely proud of their nation and culture. This is stemming, from not from the thousand years of history, but also the recent decades of economic growth. So they want to modernize, but not necessarily westernize. So that is a difference you have to bear in mind. So to summarize, when you design UX for China, you have to, pay more attention on ethnographic research and take into consideration of the cultural differences. And then when working with Chinese people, you have to spend time and effort building personal relationships with them and respect the seniors, and also show that you are genuinely interested in China, its culture and history, by learning some Mandarin. It sounds really simple and basic when I'm saying this, but you would be amazed to see how many companies have actually failed by, on doing all those basic principles, even including some very famous or, successful Western brand. For example, just give you one example. Before eBay entered China, there was a very successful online dating website in China called Each Night. Being someone working in the industry, in the IT industry when it's set up, I was one of the early registered users of this website. So I was invited with some other, very active users and early users to have a meeting with the CEO of this website. So you see, he knows how to work with us. He knows to build a personal relationship, right? So we had. It was a very informal meeting, about 10 or 20 of us. We went to his hotel room, very informal. And I remember clearly he shared, with us how passionate, how he started this website and how passionate he is and how much he wanted to work with us together to make it successful. So I remember I was so impressed. Coming back home, I basically searched, looked at all the things that I could buy or sell on this website. It was really very active discussion with him, and of course, he also gave us some presents after, just to show his appreciation for our help. So that's really, really, like I said, I was very impressed and excited. And then eBay came. Okay, so working with the locals, I said. Now, of course, they didn't. They sent in a German manager to manage the China operation. And then the chief technology officer, I think, was from the United States. Neither of them can speak any Chinese or, understood the local. No, they don't. And so they, rather than adapt, they bought Each Night, thinking it's already successful, but rather than keeping the the interface that the users like, then basically and adapt their product and service based on the local people's needs. They didn't. They stuck to their global platform, which didn't meet the local users' preference and taste at all. And then on top of that, all the change happened almost overnight. Like I said, it takes time for Chinese people to warm out to something different, but they didn't give any time for people to adjust. And the interface just changed completely to exactly the same to the eBay global platform. People just didn't like it at all. And then, at this time, Taobao started. Some of you probably have heard it's very successful online, shopping website in China. What they have done, they were managed by someone local and understand the local people. So in eBay, and then people, because they don't understand the Chinese market, and they spend a lot of money doing things that basically is not going to work for the local customer. So, but then Taobao understand everything. They had a clear strategy from the very beginning, and so look at what they're doing now. They are twice the size of Amazon and eBay combined. And their one-day promotion was more than twice of all US e-commerce that did on Cyber Monday. That's how successful they are at the moment. So whereas eBay completely failed in China and destroyed a once strong Chinese brand too. So the fact that eBay had a strong brand in the United States doesn't mean it would also be a strong brand in China. In a world that products cannot simply be translated into Chinese, designs must take into consideration of the culture and the context, the social context of their use. It is important to understand the thought models and the unique behaviors of the many different user types of Chinese people. So what the West can learn from Chinese UX so far? There is much more than you would think from a copycat. I mean, it's true that in terms of UI and technology, at the moment, lots of Chinese website apps and the products are still copied from the West, but it's changing. I'd like to draw your attention to one of the products called WeChat. it was developed by Tencent and released in 2001. Initially, it was regarded as the Chinese Shanghai version of WhatsApp. But in fact, it's not. It's actually, over the years, it evolved to be a combination of Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, Skype, and PayPal, everything really. You can basically run your entire social life on WeChat. And now they have over 600 million users worldwide. And they have also developed many features that are favored by Chinese customers. For example, the emoticons, or stickers that you call it. But China is a very expressive society. The people like and use a lot of emoticons and the stickers in the online conversation. And they like to create images and also Chinese words by using emoticons, and even to play games by emoticons. And that's, emoticon. And on top of this, also working with Haier, the biggest home appliance company in China, WeChat users can also use the app to manage their fridge. So they can set the temperature and to remote clean it. And the app can also tell the user what to cook based on what's left in the fridge and do shopping through the app. So more and more companies, including some Western companies like Honeywell and Burberry, and they have also started developing their own app on top of WeChat, so using WeChat as a platform for marketing and promotion too. So as you can see, Chinese technology companies are moving away from this copycat image and then develop unique features and also collaborate with other technology and product companies. So I've heard that some Western apps, such as Pass, now have a similar emoticon interface like as WeChat. I think that in the future, these kind of things will be more and more. Another example I'm going to give you is a great service done by non-professionals subconsciously. So Haidi Lao, this is a very popular chain hot pot restaurant in China. And because it's so popular, every time you go there, you have to queue. There's no exception. So, however, look at this picture. This is the queuing area. I mean, it's a bit disorganized and not very beautifully looking. But if you can look at carefully, when they're queuing, that women can have their nails done. Look at there's a picture actually on the wall, and it's actually showing the women actually on the left-hand side of the screen, having their nails done, and the men can have their shoes polished. And then the children can play with the game, can play with the toys and having some snacks. That's all in the queuing area. And then when you go inside the restaurant, every order is done by iPad. So when you order, it goes straight to the kitchen. So rather than being taken by a waiter, so once you have a table, you shouldn't wait too long for your food. It's actually my experience was, they actually just come after I hand off the iPad to the waiter. So yeah, that's just a couple of examples for you. So I am going to finish my talk with this video, China on Your Fingertips. Enjoy.
好，你再来看，看不见，你看我也看不见，我们这。
Right, thank you.